and you're going blank, you'd end up telling yourself nothing, think nothing, think nothing. You might as well get up and go do something. Don't judge your practice. Right? We judge things all day long, what we look like, what we wear, what we eat. We're constantly in these judgment modes. And this practice is learning to go beyond judgment and just abide in sensation of breath. Sounds, you'll hear them. This is life. Life is filled with sounds. The practice of meditation is learning to get quiet and still within all the chaos. Posture, you just want to be comfortable. If you're on the cushions, often it helps slide into the front third. Pushing the stomach forward allows the back to straighten. Shoulders are relaxed, hands can be on the knees or in the lap, whatever's comfortable. If you're on the benches or chairs, also just trying to sit up straight, shoulders relaxed. I'll guide us as we begin. We'll settle into a little bit of silence. I'll say things periodically to wake you up because you've fallen asleep, which isn't the end of the world, but you didn't come all this way to go to sleep. So do your best to stay awake, and we'll go from there. And starting with the eyes closed, if comfortable, or slightly open. Mouth is open or closed. Start with taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. And eventually settle into a natural rhythm of the breath. Going throughout the practice, you'll hear sounds. These are not distractions, not disruptions. Simply what's happening around us as we sit. Noticing the mind as it wanders, jumping from thought to thought. Gently guide the attention, focus, to the stomach or chest. Breathing in, feel them rise. Breathing out, they fall. Simply continue this practice, observing sensation of breath, expecting nothing but to sit and breathe. As the mind wanders, lost in thought, recognize it. Release that thought. Return attention, focus to the breath. Where's your mind? Return attention, focus to the breath. Keeping the mind alert, aware of each sound. Each thought. Each physical sensation. Yet concerned with nothing but sitting, breathing. letting go of expectations, letting go of judgment, just sitting, breathing. Learning to be comfortable in stillness, quiet, wanting nothing but to sit and breathe. And with the body still, rested. And the speech quiet, aware of all sounds. And the mind learning to settle. Know what it's like to just sit and breathe. Knowing with each breath, there's nothing else to do. Nowhere else to go. No one else to be. Everything beautiful, exactly as it is. Sitting, breathing. And once again, taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. And as you slowly open the eyes, slowly begin to move. Most important with the practice of meditation is to recognize how you feel now, immediately after. Compare this to how you typically feel throughout your day. Recognize the difference, if there is one. Ask yourselves how you prefer to feel every day for the rest of your life. And realize however you feel now, if it's quiet, calm, still, or a busy mind, racing mind, whatever you're sitting with at this moment, it's nothing to do with anything I said. It's nothing to do with how you sit and hold the hands across the legs. It's nothing to do with the sounds around us or anything else for that matter. It's everything to do with your own mind and your own mind's reaction to an external condition. This is what the Buddha called pratitya samuppada, means dependent origination. This is the basis of the Buddha's awakening. The word Buddha simply means awakened. He was a human being no different than anyone else in this room who began to understand why he suffered, why he got angry, sad, depressed, stressed, anxious. He began to understand the causal relationship of all phenomena. And what that means very simply for all of us in this room, regardless of where you come from or what you believe in or where you think you're going, your whole life is filled with things that happen. You react. More stuff happens, more reactions. That's what we get every single day. This practice is learning what it's like to respond to something quietly, peacefully, still. Because for most of us, the way we respond to the last 20 minutes is quite different from how you respond to everything else that's happening throughout your day. So all we're working on is closing the gap where the way you feel now is closer to how you feel always. Just as driven, motivated, productive, successful, whatever that means to you in your respective lives. But with a mind steady, clear, focused, distracted by nothing, disturbed by no one. This is not an easy practice. This is not an escape. This is direct perception into the present moment. And that present moment might not be so wonderful, but it is what's happening at that moment. This practice is learning about being with things as they are. We spend so much of our lives wishing this had happened, wishing that happened, trying to change this from the past, trying to control this in the future, hoping they do this, wanting them to do this. So much of our lives is wrapped up around trying to control, fix, and manipulate everything around us. And this practice of learning to be with things as they are and embrace them as they are in each moment. And again, that doesn't mean that life is easy or simple, but when you learn to be with it, at least it's real. I mean, it's all an illusion to some extent, but it's seemingly real. Meditation is free. Buddhist practice is free. Sitting, breathing, becoming aware of what you think, what you say, and what you do. And learning to be kind. And that's it. Kind to yourself, kind to others. And that's the heart of the practice. So I don't have too much I want to touch on other than maybe what I said earlier about diligence. So I always just prefer to open up to questions, meditation, Buddhist practice, anything on your mind that I can address, and we'll go from there. Yeah.
I hear you talking about allowing people to be, not wanting them to be a certain way, do a certain thing. And I just wonder, is there any space for asking for what you need, for asking for what I need? Or do I just, I have trouble between wishing people might do this or that versus maybe it's okay to just ask for what I need, and then they can, they can't.
Yeah, I mean, I think you kind of answered it yourself. The first thing I want to clarify, just to back up, if I'm understanding your question, it's about, your question is basically, is it okay to ask for what you need? Wanting people to be a certain way and ask them if they can be that way for you or for them, right? That's kind of what you're asking? That's how I heard it.
Or can I, even if I don't want to change them, can I ask them for what I need, I guess, from them?
Right. You can ask them anything you want. You could ask them to fly, right? You could ask them to speak another language. You could ask them to swim across the ocean. That doesn't mean they're going to be able to. Buddhist, I wanted to rephrase your question just so I was hearing it correctly, or just to understand I was hearing what you were saying. What I was starting to say before that was that when you look at Buddhist teachings, it's not about things being okay or not okay. This isn't a right or wrong thing. So even in the way you phrased your question, you start out by saying, is it okay? And this is for everybody, not just that question. But when I hear questions that start with, is it okay? What that often means is somebody wants to know, is it okay, according to Buddhism, to ask people to do things? You can ask people to do anything you want. That has nothing to do with Buddhism. What the Buddha was teaching was that when you ask people to do what you want, which you will, understand that sometimes they won't.
That's a tough one.
Now we're getting to the heart of the practice. Your question is really simple. Can I ask people to be nice to me? Yes. Can I ask people to pay attention to me? Yes. Can I ask people to tell me everything I want to hear? Yes. Can I ask the people that I know and love to be a certain way? Yes. I can ask them lots of things. That has nothing to do with this teaching. This teaching is about understanding that when you do all of those things, you're not always going to hear what you want to hear or see what you want to see or get what you want to get. That's where the practice comes in. I say a lot that this path has taught me to not expect anything from anyone ever. Okay? It doesn't mean I don't ask people to take care of the temple. I say every Saturday at 12 o'clock, we will now spend 2 hours cleaning the temple for anyone who wants to stay. I share that. I would love that. I don't expect it, because if I did, I'd be really disappointed. Gratitude to the 2 to 3 people who do stay and clean, right? I get to work my sarcasm and smart-ass behavior into Buddhist practice. It's phenomenal. At least from my lens. Maybe not from yours.
You like it.
Because the Buddha said, don't do anything out of pressure and obligation or guilt, right? You don't want to do anything like that. You shouldn't be obligated to do things. But my point is in making it very real, right? I would love for 50 people here to stay and spend the next 2 hours cleaning the temple. Is that going to happen? No. Am I going to be disappointed or angry or sad or miserable? No. Everyone's going to do what they want to do. That's a silly little thing. It's actually important. Otherwise, you'd be in a mess of a temple. But when you're talking about things that you're probably talking about, which are people that you love and you want them to be a certain way, is that close? They ain't going to be that way. They're going to be how they want to be. Has anyone ever asked you to be a certain way? And are you very good at being exactly how they want you to be?
I have been, and that's not been healthy for me.
And that's what?
I have been, and that has not been healthy for me.
Oh, okay. I can't turn this into that direction, but my point is we struggle often at being and doing what others want us to be and do. So why do we then think others are going to be and do what we want them to be and do? It's tough. The real part of the practice is ask people to be who you want them to be if you'd like to, but be ready for a huge disappointment. Or recognize who they are. All the suffering they've experienced in their life, all the trauma they've experienced in their life, all the pain they've experienced in their life, all the experiences they've had throughout the years, they've lived their own battle, just like we have. I don't expect anyone to be anyway. I then have a choice, right? If I'm walking next to somebody who's going to punch me all day long, I can say to them, stop punching me. They might keep punching me because that's what they want to do. I then have a choice. Do I want to keep walking next to them or not? That's on me, not them. I can just as easily stop walking and turn around.
Is that okay?
Huh?
Is that okay?
But you didn't hear the first part of what I just said? Is what okay? Okay, according to whom? According to Jeff? Don't listen to me. According to the Buddha, he died 2,500 years ago. Is what okay? Walking away from somebody? If they're punching you. Unless you want us to keep getting punched. Don't look at okay or not okay. Look at what is your intention behind your action. Often we have loved ones, family members, friends that we want to be there for them. We want to support them. They have troubles. They don't do what we like. And so we don't want to turn our back on them. So you can't have it both ways. You can't stay with somebody who's, physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally torturing you and want them to be different. And then when they're not different from who they are, be disappointed. They're being who they are. If you want to choose to walk away, then choose to walk away. If you want to choose to stay, then understand what you're staying with. But to stay in a certain situation where the person is just being who they are and want them to be different from that, it doesn't work. I would love to fly. I can't. No matter how much I would like to fly or how much I would want somebody else to be a certain way right now, I can't. That's on me. And I don't personally think it's really fair for any of us to expect anyone to be anyway. That's why I go back to, again, I don't want to go in the direction of your response, but I want us to truly ask ourselves, when people have asked us to be a certain way for them, how easy is it for us to be that way? It's not. So I don't like okay, not okay. What is the intention? When we find ourselves in unhealthy, toxic situations, you make a choice. But don't look for Buddhism to say this is the okay or not okay to do it. Ask yourself, what is the intention behind it? What is the intention of me staying in this situation? What is my intention in removing myself from the situation? Is it out of greed and anger and ignorance, or is it out of loving kindness, compassion? If somebody's walking next to me and punching me all day long, and I turn and walk away, that's an incredibly compassionate thing to do because I just stopped them from punching me. I gave them that gift. Buddhist practice doesn't answer or solve problems. It also, I don't find, makes things easier, but it makes you look at what's really happening.
So my question is that part of the practice is being with things as they are. Now, where's the discernment in that? For example, you have a leaky roof. You just say, well, that's how it is, and you learn to accept it, or
You have a what? I didn't hear the word.
leaky roof.
Oh, leaking roof, yeah. Go ahead, finish.
Or do you plan, strive, work towards fixing it?
Yes.
So part of the practice is we sit and let things be as they are.
Mm-hmm.
But at what point do you try to change them?
Sure.
And when do you?
Yeah, great question. Again, kind of similar theme. So look at the intention, leaking roof. Wow, my roof is leaking. Okay, I have a leaking roof. Now my first reaction could be frustration, could be anger, could be blame. There's all kinds of emotions that could arise when the roof is leaking. All of those emotions Don't change the one simple fact that the roof is leaking, right? Then discernment kicks in. And I have to ask myself, should I fix this roof? Well, if the roof continues to leak, what happens?
Damage.
Gets damaged, more damage, right? And then now I have to fix what else has been damaged, right? If a roof leaks, fix it and move on. Buddhist practice isn't about sitting there watching things as they fall apart or break, right? The intention, going back to what I said, the intention behind fixing a leak that's roofing is. Am I even making it? I can't even speak right now. My intention behind whatever I'm trying to say in fixing the thing that you're asking about, what's the intention behind that in fixing it? What's the intention?
To make the problem go away.
To make the problem go away and to not cause what?
More damage.
More damage. Now, it's often easier to look at things like this with a roof. Now, what if we just took what you just said and applied it to people? Not so much to make the problem go away part, but the part that says, I don't want to cause more damage. Right? There's one of my favorite quotes from the Dalai Lama is something to the effect of, if you can't help people, at least don't harm them. Right? So it's Buddhist practice, especially if you're new. It's not this it's not a passive, complacent thing that I'm just going to sit there and under a tree and let the world fall apart. Right? Thich Nhat Hanh became very famous for his what he called engaged Buddhism. Martin Luther King nominated him for a Nobel Peace Prize for his work in social justice. Right? Be actively engaged in society. Be actively engaged in people's lives and helping yourself and others suffer less. Be actively engaged that when a roof leaks, fix it. But do it without anger and hatred and frustration. And then when you fix it, do it without, pride and look at me, I fixed a roof. Just fix the roof and move on.
Some of the work in this way, like fixing a roof or having a job, like as a plan for you have to spend a certain amount of time in the future.
Yes.
Thinking about how things will be. Whereas the practice has to be in the present.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm having a little bit of how do you reconcile the two?
It's a common question and a very difficult practice of, how do you, if you're planning anything, right? As you say this to the college kids a lot, right? When you're a freshman in college and you're learning about Buddhist practice, you don't after 3 weeks go home and say to mom and dad or whoever, you know what, I'm just going to not go to school anymore because none of that matters, right? You are planning your future. Presently planning your future. But here's the thing about planning your future. We don't know what's going to happen, right? Did you drive here today?
Yeah.
Do you have a plan of driving home today?
Vague one, yeah.
Come on. You drove here, but you're gonna walk home? Right? Is your car where you parked it?
I hope so.
Did you park in that lot over there?
No, just on the street.
You're not gonna get towed, are you?
I hope not.
You hope not, right? Lots of hopes. The reality is, as you're sitting right here, you drove in, you parked, you came in here, you sit down, you're doing your little meditation Buddhist thing, and your plan, when this is done, is to get in your car and drive home. But you truly have no idea if your car is even there.
Thank you.
See how anxiety now kicks in? Now you're anxious, now you're worried, now you're fearful, now you're gonna run, your car's probably fine, don't worry. Only on Sundays do we tell, right? Don't worry. But that's my point, is that we have plans for everything in our life. You are always going to make plans, but they're not always going to work out. And when they don't work out, how do we respond to it? Think about it this way. Did you ever, throughout your life, think someday on a Saturday morning at 11 o'clock, I'm going to be at some Buddhist temple doing meditation to try and be calm and peaceful? None of us did. We wouldn't be sitting here right now, right? So things don't work how we want them to. Plan all you like. I plan lots of stuff. But some of it works, some of it doesn't. How am I in that situation? And then even going back to what I talked about earlier, diligence, is that as you have plans, how diligent are you at actually working to make them become a reality, right? Anyone's life worked out exactly how you thought it would up to this point? Nope. Right? But for some reason, we think that we have a plan for the whole rest of our life is going to work out okay. It's just going to work out. And by work out, I mean it's going to happen. Your life is going to happen in a completely different way than you had ever expected. And that's why I use the car as a simple example, right? Because someday we'll walk outside and things won't be there. People won't be there. Stuff we have won't be there. But we think it will. That's our plan. All of us plan to live through today and tomorrow, but we don't know. Some people won't. So don't waste today. Don't spend all day long, worried about nonsense, gossiping, slander, talking about others, trying to fix and control everybody, trying to change everyone around you. Enjoy the life that you have right now. Have a quality of life that you're okay with, not what stuff you have and where you go and what you wear and what you buy. And just have a quality of life that you enjoy, because we don't know when it's done. Right? Oh. Other question? Yeah.
Mine's kind of an experience I just had related to attention. I had a guest, an old friend, staying with me for a couple weeks, and she proceeded to be extremely critical, controlling. I got a direct experience of that, which is great because I do that to people. So
Thank you.
yeah.
Oh my God, in like 14 years, I think that's the first time I've ever heard anyone just honestly and openly say, I control people.
I tried.
I try to. Thank you.
But anyway, we're eating in this little restaurant, and she said something. I literally felt the rage come up, and I was gonna blast her. And I opened my mouth, and I swear to God, I heard your voice. It was your voice. And it was, what's your intention?
Right.
Right there.
Oh, asking yourself what's your
Yeah, I
intention.
heard it inside me, but it was your voice. I mean, it was like, oh. So I paused, and I thought, and I took a breath. Anyway, I eventually told her kindly, about what was happening. And the result of that was the rest of the day, the rest of the time she was with me, it was perfect. And she asked me at the airport, she said, after you talked to me, was I better? And I said, yeah. And she goes, I want to thank you for pointing that out to me. So it was like huge for me, because I was on the verge of just going off, and it was like, wow, it's really a great
That's great.
experience.
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
It's really, and you've heard me say this, but it's not just about meditation. It's not just about reading another Buddhist book. It's about seeing how in your life, these things that we sit here week after week and talk about, how they eventually do play out in real life. At dinner or wherever, with a friend, having a meal, and all of a sudden you recognize you're just going to go off on them, and you stopped, right? That's how this stuff changes your life. And in that moment, it doesn't just change your life, it changed your friend's life. And then if you changed your life in that moment, and you changed your friend's life in that moment, then as you were parting ways, that parting moment, that dynamic was probably a lot more beautiful than it ever could have been if you had in that moment responded the way you wanted to. And so much of that is about this, not just for you, but for everybody, is about our ego. In that moment, your friend is attacking and your ego is being hurt. And we want to defend that by fighting back. And then we just try to attack their ego. And then there's just these two egos. It's not even these two egos fighting over probably nonsense, right? Probably just silly stuff, not life-threatening situations. So then you just have two egos battling. That's what we do all day long. And when we can recognize it and stop it and see how that drastically changes the relationship we have with someone, that's powerful. It really is. Yeah. Someday my voice will go away, I promise.
I get to hear your voice all the time.
Yeah. Other thoughts or questions or anything?
Learning about the second arrow, and I find it to be so valuable because the stories that I tell myself around my pain, like, and you were talking about like even the leaking roof. So the arrow hits, and from the way I understand it, okay, you need to pull the arrow out and attend to the wound. The end. The end. But we tell ourselves all these stories like, where did it come from? Oh my God, somebody hurts me. Oh my God, I gotta get this out. Is he gonna hit me again? What's gonna happen? And pretty soon the suffering is just blown out of control.
Yeah.
And I find that whole concept is so enlightening because of the stories I tell myself at the deli at Mom's. Oh my God, that lady's in front. She's gonna get in front of me. Now I'm gonna be late. Now, oh my God. Who cares?
Yeah, it's always at Mom's. You know, I mean, these are the greatest places of practice, at meals with friends, at bonds, at, traffic lights, in traffic, at, gas stations, all of these places, customer service, on the phone. These are the places where, yes, in that moment, the second arrow, for those who don't know, just in brief, is the idea something hits us. And then, okay, so now we're angry at what happened. And then instead of being angry, now we're sad because we're angry. And then now we're depressed because we're sad because we're angry. Now we're, fearful because we're depressed. Because just be angry at what happened. Just that first arrow that hits, be with that as it is, whatever it is, right? Be with the thing as it is and respond to it with kindness. See the person in front of you at Vons who got in line at the deli counter in front of you and just say, okay, that's where they need to be right now. And as you know, is it really that big of a deal that, we have to wait 2, 3, 4, 5 more minutes because they're in front of us? Those are great moments to practice. When you're driving and a car's blinker is on and you've had a bad day and you really don't want to let them in, why not? Like, just slow down a minute. Let that car in. Realize how hard it is just to let a complete stranger get in front of you on the freeway. That's like the hardest thing in the world for some people, which is ridiculous. When we allow other people to do certain things, it's a gift. Maybe that's what they need. Maybe giving that person the space in front of you at the deli counter is exactly what that person needed to help them not get wrapped up in their own crazy stories. So it's beautiful to look at it as that's my practice. I'm not going to add on all these arrows, and then to begin to see that's what they need. Right? We don't know for sure, but it helps to think that they're doing what they want. Right? Now, again, if the person turns around and starts throwing deli food at you, then you probably, should maybe walk away. But if they're just in front of you, that's okay. Good for them. So, thanks. Anything else before we wrap up here? One more thought or comment or question and close. Yeah.
Life-altering loss. If you have a situation where it's like you're looking and you are trying to accept that, but it's so impactful to you.
Yeah.
The practice, it's hard.
Yes.
How long does it go on? Who knows? But
yes.
You deal with it. It's like, I'm not even asking a question.
No, you're not. You're not asking a question. There's no question to ask. You're pointing out what is real. What is real is that life-altering loss hurts. And then your question sort of was, how long does that go on? And you said, did you say a long time?
No, I said, no, you don't.
Who knows, right? You don't know. But there's no, Buddha's teaching chapter 7, verse 6 that says, this is what's going to happen when you have a life-altering loss. You know what's going to happen when you have a life-altering loss? You're going to be in pain. Because you're human. That's it. That's reality. We love, we care, and we hurt. That's real. But do we allow that pain and that loss to ruin us? Again, the second arrow, same thing. Be with that pain, be with that loss, but then what do we do with that? How do we transform that into maybe greater purpose or greater being, right? How do we use that pain and that loss that we feel to inspire and to motivate? What does it do to us?
The story you shared about the gentleman whose son was killed.
Yeah.
And went to prison and reconciled and became a father to the person that killed his son. It is so like how incredible that is.
Yes.
It's an inspiring story.
Yes.
It's hard to-
Yeah, it's hard to imagine. I mean, in brief, and I'll close with this, but it was Zine Kamiza. This was 25 so years ago. His son was a 20-year-old kid at San Diego State, delivering pizzas, gang violence. Tony Hicks shot and killed Tariq Kamiza. And they started the Tariq Kamiza Foundation, but his father, Zine Kamiza, reached out to Tony Hicks and the grandfather who raised Tony in act of forgiveness. And for the last 20, 25 years, they've been going into schools. And Azim will stand there and say, this man's grandson murdered my son. And shortly after he was murdered, he reached out to Tony, it was big news in California because he was the first juvenile tried as an adult, as a 14-year-old kid. He was tried as an adult. And Azim reached out to him a few months after and said to Tony Hicks, I forgive you. I forgive you for murdering my son. He said, I see victims at both ends of the gun. I volunteered with Tariq Kamiza Foundation and Azim for about 2 years. I worked with them intimately for almost 2 years. And I would go in with them to schools and ride with Azim, and it was one of the most incredible human beings I've ever met. I mean, this guy, still to this day, they still do it. They go into schools. And they say, and now, actually recently, as of a few months ago only, Tony was finally released from prison. Azim's been fighting for his release for 25 years. And now he goes with him. Actually, I don't know that he's actually started going with him into schools yet, but they work together. But they would go into schools before when Tony was still in prison. And they would say, this man's grandson murdered my son. And they would show where the bullet, someone would stand behind them and they would show where the bullet passed through Azim's son. They said, I reached out to him in forgiveness. He would say, I see victims at both ends of the gun. Our loss, right? We lost our son, our family, our brother. And we live in a society where someone at 14 years old feels so lost and so confused and so angry. And he has the ability to just get a gun and shoot someone. It was his gang initiation. That's what he had to do to be initiated into this gang. Go kill some innocent kid. So that was Azim's thing. And still to this day, it's the same message. They've been doing the same thing all these years. Victims at both ends of the gun. Meaning, when people, and you go back to the questions earlier about things we want other people to do, right? Sorry, I can't see it all, but I'm looking at, you go back to things like that, right? We don't know what other people are going through. And so Azim had to sit with the idea that he doesn't know what a 14-year-old kid is going through, what his situation is. And if he could forgive somebody for murdering his son, then I've always seen this as the ultimate story of forgiveness, that anything is possible. Now I want you all to ask yourself, what grudges are you holding on to right now? What people are you afraid to give forgiveness to? What people will you not let back into your heart because of whatever they did to you? And if there's a human being out there who could forgive the person who murdered his son, not that we haven't experienced trauma in this room or things that we've gone through, but and not that it's not important, but I can't imagine it being worse than having your son murdered and having to forgive that person. And that also includes yourself. Don't be afraid to forgive yourself. It wasn't Tony's fault. Azim didn't blame Tony. Right? So the things we've done, don't blame yourself. It's a series of causes and conditions. Things happen. And we can't always control the outcome and the result. Things just happen. So with that, I'll close. So you can make sure your car's still there. Join palms. May the benefit of this practice be shared with all beings in all directions. May all be at peace. May all be free from suffering. may any merit gained from this practice be transferred to the one who needs it most right now. So a few quick announcements. Thanks all for being here. My name is Jeff. I'm a Dharma bum. We opened up this temple 14 years ago to introduce Buddhist practice to local folks. Those of us who lead, we're not monks, we're not nuns, we're not gurus, we're not masters, we're not teachers, we're not looking for students. We're just practitioners. We do our best to take our understanding of Buddhist teachings and put it into terms that hopefully make sense to those who show up. So every night we have different practices going on. Every Thursday, 5 o'clock, I think probably one of the best things around here, we prepare gourmet vegetarian meals and we feed 200 people who sleep on the street. So anytime you think your life sucks and you kind of lack gratitude, just put food into somebody's hand who sleeps on the sidewalk, and hopefully it helps you find an appreciation for how privileged and fortunate we are to have what we have in our lives. First Saturday of the month, so it's going on, finishing up downstairs right now. We do a 4-hour, it's a half day of silence. So 20 minutes of silence is torture. I strongly recommend trying it for 4 hours. Was anyone here Tuesday night when I told Bruce he couldn't ask questions until he went, you know where he's at right now? That just tells you he cannot go to class without asking a question, right? He was asking all these questions and I said, you cannot ask another question until you do the 4-hour half day of silence retreat. Sure enough, there he is. So we're stuck with his questions again. Right? Good for Bruce. So that's a great practice. It's the first Saturday of the month. Other than that, if I never see you again, think good thoughts, speak good words, do good deeds. That's the heart of this practice. So good luck. Oh, yes. And tomorrow at 2, Damien Rose, tomorrow, yeah? We'll do the singing bowl meditation. 2 o'clock and lots of singing bowls.